It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. I know this is a little bit earlier than I put in my note, but it's actually the right time. So today's guest is Bailey Payne. She's actually a behavioral analyst, but here she is. She used to work for Child Protective Services. And I told her that our audience is dealing with Child Protective Services all the time, and it's really, really scary. And for Child Protective Services, I thought that she could really help enlighten us on what's expected, why not to be so scared, what you should right, what you should wrong. But so thank you so much for joining, Bailey, even though I totally changed the topic on you last minute.
That's okay. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
so we are going to talk about behavioral systems afterward, but just as I got her here, can you tell us like why, first of all, how common is it for Child Protective Services to get involved in a case with children? Is this a common thing? Is it really rare?
Gosh, I don't even know what the statistics behind
Okay.
that is. So when I did Child Protective Services, I had the role of providing reunification services, right? So that was my primary role, but then also consulted with investigators, also consulted with intensive therapeutic services to work towards reunification, even during an investigative process. So that was my role. And so, gosh, when that was my role, I don't know what the percentage is compared to the rest of America, the rest of our country. I don't know. I just know that
You
the
were
cases
probably,
that I've received, yeah.
yeah, I imagine you had a job and you were busy.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure.
So this is not a completely uncommon thing because it's very, very common in our world. And I didn't even know that you did stuff with reunification. Can you talk about like what that even means, especially during an investigation? Because one of the things that we see is there's an accusation made and there is no reunification. There's a separation and people get really panicked and are terrified that it's going to destroy the relationship. So tell us what that means.
Yeah, so reunification is working a plan to reconnect, replace, revisit whatever situation the child was removed from pending the investigation, pending the separation, right? The separation serves the purpose to investigate, but then reunification comes in to implement a plan to reunify to wherever we are investigating, wherever the child was removed from or separated from. The purpose of reunification is to rectify that situation, to fix what needs to be fixed, if anything, to ensure safety and return them to their ongoing family situation.
So what's interesting, I think, and a big question that a lot of our people have is, what if a parent has actually been abusing the child? Would there still be reunification? Or what if the parent goes to jail? Is there still reunification?
Yeah, yes, reunification is always the goal. Now, granted, every situation is a little bit different and depending on the severity, right? If there is a jail sentence or even a prison sentence for an extended amount of time, that's going to impact working reunification.
Mhm.
For reunification to be successful, we have to have a parent or caregiver present, unincarcerated, and actively working a plan. But yes, has abuse happened and reunification occurred? Absolutely. If that parent or caregiver works a plan, completes, whatever the goals are to ensure safety for that child to return.
So that's the part I'm really curious about is like, what's a typical plan or what are some of the things like relief that someone would ask if a child has been in an abusive situation? How do you even know where to start to fix that?
Yeah. So is that addiction treatment? Is that counseling? Is it psychiatric treatment? It's obviously 1,000% going to involve some therapy for the children, and those children's therapists must be on board with, where do we start with appropriate visitation, when and if we get to that point, and is it therapeutic visits only? And then that therapist recognizes, yes, this is healthy, yes, this is safe. Let's move to the next level. So I think it all depends on what's behind the scenes going on that has resulted in abuse or resulted in allegations. And that's what reunification goes in to try to mend. Can it always be mended? No, right? But that's the goal, is how can we help this family unit be as healthy as possible, and what type of treatment is needed to get there.
This is so helpful. I can't even believe that you have this experience, because it is not what I thought we were going to be talking about. But based on that, domestic violence is a huge issue in our community, and often there's been terrible physical violence against the spouse. And so once they're separated, our client is often the one who's been the target parent. They
Yeah.
are terrified that their child will face the same thing, and they think, well, why should my child have to have a relationship with an abuser? What do you think about that?
I think, I mean, every situation is so different. And so it would be, I don't know, I don't want to make an overgeneralized
Mhm.
statement because it just doesn't apply to
Right,
everyone's
right.
situation is so different. But at the end of the day, if Child Protective Services is involved, the court is involved,
Mhm.
and so it's about a guardian ad litem representing your child. It's about a child therapist. It's about a therapist potentially for both parents or caregivers. It's about a therapist that sees the family unit potentially as a whole. Now, obviously, in a domestic violence situation, that's not going to happen. We're going to ensure emotional and physical safety. But if if there's domestic violence, if the person being accused of violence works a system to where a therapeutic community determines that contact is appropriate and healthy, and these are the methods that we can utilize to ensure that safety, that's always the goal.
Yeah. So do you think it is because in general people think that children are better having a relationship with two parents because they've been their that's their primary attachment bond, or is there a reason why there's a push for a kid to have a relationship with both parents?
I don't know what is, I think that psychologists would have a specific answer. And, I would almost be curious, what is the court's reasoning behind that? But at the end of the day, both parents have legal rights. And if a parent is showing interest in
Mhm.
wanting to see their child and they're working a plan to do so, the court's going to work with them to see what's needed and required to get there. That's, I think,
Yeah.
I don't know the psychology behind that. That's not my role, but that's how our system works.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And one of the things, so I'm a New Yorker. I know you're not from New York at
Yeah,
all, other end of the country, but I think we talk about the harsh New York reality check. It's like this is what it is. Like whether you agree or
yeah,
not,
yeah,
that the system does push for a relationship with both
yeah,
parents, not just for parental rights, but for children, that they believe that the child is half of each parent,
yeah.
and so they are very hesitant to do any permanent contact from one of the parents, because children are affected by losing a parent. Even when that parent's abusive, there's all kinds of ramifications in terms of how they attach to others moving forward in their relationships, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And even when, unfortunately, a child is the victim of abuse, and let's say it's not safe to reunify, and so we give permanent custody maybe to one parent or to a family member. Well, guess what happens when they turn 18? Almost all of the time, who do they seek out?
Mm.
So the system can protect during their childhood years. And so I would encourage to, every situation's different, and how well a parent works this program or follows recommendations to do what's needed for things to be healthy. And I know that's not always the case, but if you can get that to as healthy and as safe of a place as possible, that's going to prevent the severe amount of trauma that's going to happen when they're 18, and they're going to seek them anyways, usually.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a great point. I think that's something a lot of us don't think about, because we imagine that as things are happening now, it's just going to stay this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's take it on the flip side. A lot of our clients have also been falsely accused of abuse during a very high conflict divorce, and
Yeah.
they feel terrified. So
Yeah.
CPS is called. Do you have any advice for what they shouldn't do, and then maybe what they should do when there's been false allegations of abuse?
Yeah. I think that it's so scary to be, at the pit of blame for something that you didn't do. But we also, I think, I mean, I personally have experienced the system fails
Hmm.
And so, I imagine that your community resonates with me in I can't always trust the system because we know from the inside how unsafe and how scary things have been. And the system doesn't always show up to protect that. So
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing is we go to immediate fear, right? Because the system's coming into my home and I've potentially seen failures in the system. And so, what if this becomes a system failure? But
Hmm.
I think I just have to normalize that Child Protective Services receives so many false claims that become very clear and evident in one quick home visit, a couple of quick phone calls, a quick check in, a quick check in with your child, and can be dismissed so quickly. And in fact, that doesn't represent or mean anything for you as a person. And in fact, when it's known to be unsubstantiated and a false report or a false claim, it doesn't represent you, it represents the reporter.
Mm. Wow. That's heartening because I think people get just terrified.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not the person to like break down that fear because it's just so real and so intense. And I mean, there's it's in that situation, we need so many intense coping skills because that's just the heightened of all trauma, of all things in life. And there's nothing more just gut wrenching, fueled with fear than threatening our contact with our children. But
Mhm.
I think that hopefully it's helpful to know it really is more common than you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see, I mean, or do you remember seeing from the past more allegations against women versus men? Or is it across the board, like for both?
False, false.
False allegations. Yeah, false allegations.
Yeah, I would say historically it's more against women.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. I thought you were going to say the opposite.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, historic from my one single person experience, it would be more against women.
Wow, interesting. Um, so what about let's say somebody has CPS called on them and they come to their house. How should they be behaving?
Normal,
Normal?
as normal as possible. I don't think you don't need to scrub your baseboards. You don't need, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, children, I don't know how to, there are a lot of imperfect homes in America.
Yeah.
And children remain in homes that are not perfectly clean, not perfectly picked up, with imperfect parents, imperfect caregivers. Things just don't have to be perfect to determine a child is safe. I
Mhm.
think that child protective service workers really recognize and pick up on when things are real and genuine and when there's something fishy going on.
Yeah.
So I say just be true and authentic and represent your life as it is, and things will be okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate that. And I know that people listening now and later are going to be like, okay, just because people get
We'll
really,
get
really worried
we'll
about
get
that.
through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing too because investigations with child protective services, they take a long time, and
Mhm.
waiting for that phone call to come in to schedule it, waiting for you to come to my home, waiting for me on to get the conclusion of this report feels like it takes eternity.
Mhm.
And it's just a brutal process, and it's not you, it's not pending abuse results against you, it's just the system. The
Yeah.
system is filled, the system is busy, and that's just a part of the process.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for all of that. Now let's talk about behavioral systems. So
Yes.
what led you from that to what you do now? And also tell us what you do now.
Yeah. So when I did child protective services, I would say my favorite aspect of providing services was, children that have been exposed to trauma, abuse, and neglect are obviously going to present with behavioral struggles. That's
Mhm.
common. And so my favorite part of doing child protective services were working with the kids on my caseload that had high impact behaviors. And
Mhm.
so I knew that this is where I needed to be. I needed to work with people with behaviors. And so hop, skip, and a jump, I became a behavior analyst. So
Okay.
that's the service that I provide now. I primarily work in schools. I consult in schools, working with teachers, and training teachers and coaching. I also work in homes and I provide private behavioral therapy. And then I teach at a university, teaching future educators how to manage behavior in schools.
So I see with a lot of our clients, they have children who are very physically violent.
Yeah.
Any advice on how to deal with a very aggressive child who's maybe a tween age? We see 14 as a very difficult age.
Yeah, and it's so complex. I think that what I want people to know about changing behavior is it's not an overnight fix and it's a marathon. And also, it's not about just responding different to
Mhm.
behavior. That is such a small piece of it. Really, to change behavior, it is about all of the things we do front loading the environment. It's
Okay.
how we talk, it's how we teach, how to access our attention, it's how we build relationships, it's how we create our environment and our systems that's going to make the biggest impact on those high impact behaviors.
Okay, so tell us a little bit, like, what are some tips that people can use now? Because everyone here is like crisis driven. Like, what do I do right now to start improving the environments and the systems, our family system in our home, even if it's split?
I think it's so hard. Number one, I just say that you have to give yourself grace. I've been a single mom with zero support. And I think that what could have benefited me the most in moments of crisis is to just give myself grace that I don't need to be a perfect mom. And so I think that when we're living in crisis, it's so hard to stop and try to use and implement all the skills. And that's okay. Just
Mhm.
be real, just be you, and give your
Oh, wait a sec. Sorry, Bailey, the your volume went off. Oh, wait, I don't know if it's me. Bailey, can you hear me? Your
Can you
volume
hear?
went off. And now I can hear
Yep.
you. Yeah, it went
Can
off
you
for
hear
like
me?
20 seconds. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Where did you lose me at? What was I
So
saying? I just
so
kept
I
on
was
going.
That's okay. So yeah, so I was just asking about some tips people can do like right now to change their behavior systems and their environment. I mean,
Gotcha.
their family systems and their environment.
Yeah, so I think it's so hard when you're in crisis mode. And I think it's unrealistic to think, oh, I got to use all these skills. I got to use all these systems when you're living in crisis mode. I think
Mhm.
it's so important. Step one is to just give yourself grace. I've been a single mom. I've been a single mom with no support. And I think if somebody could have whispered in my ear at that moment, just give yourself grace. You don't need to be a perfect mom. That would have probably been all I needed to hear. Right.
Mm,
So, I think that when you're living in crisis mode, it's so hard to think about what do I need to be doing to change behavior? Because as parents, right, that's what we get so focused on is I'm worried about my child's aggressive. I'm worried about they're sneaking in things and stealing. I'm so scared my child is blatantly lying to me. They're
mhm.
being disrespectful, right? We worry, I think, just naturally as parents about all of our children's barriers and struggles because we don't want our children to struggle. And
Yeah.
then therefore that becomes our focus is
Hmm.
our children's problems when we've got to flip the script. To
Yeah.
change behavior, we've got to lean in to strength and we've got to lean into the good. And I think that parents, we can do that in ourselves to lean into your own good. There are things you are doing right, even living in crisis mode. Lean into your good and lean into your child's good to flip your mindset, flip the perspective, because we ultimately teach our children how to get our attention. We
Mm,
teach our children how to connect with us by what I focus on, by what I talk to them about, by what I comment on, and what I compliment. Everything that we interact with our children on, that's how we're teaching them how to get attention. And if we're so worried about the problems that I'm primarily focusing on those, we're reliably going to get more.
So it's almost like you're getting your negative attention is eliciting your attention.
Yeah,
So you're saying instead of always thinking, looking for the mistakes and the blemishes and the bad stuff and dealing with the problems, is to also step back and think about the wonderful things about your child and start noticing those more, commenting on and complimenting those too.
absolutely. We are going to teach our children how to interact with us. If that's through problem, undesired behavior, if that's through having big talks and debriefs about how this can't happen anymore, or if that's about, let's talk about what was the best part about your day. Let me tell you about what you've done so good today. I know there were some hiccups, but this is what I really noticed today. That
Mm-hmm.
in our interactions, we're going to teach our children how their future behavior will unfold.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So, Bailey, how can people find you and learn more? Because you said you do work privately with people. Do you do anything virtually or is everything in person?
I do. So I have some virtual asynchronous parent and caregiver trainings on
Mhm.
my website. And then also you can find Behavior Breakthrough at all major book retailers. And when I'm talking about our interactions and how we kind of set up the environment to encourage future behavior, that's the point of Behavior Breakthrough. My mission of Behavior Breakthrough unfolded when I was a single mom. And really, I needed these words spoken to me to try to understand my own behavior and my child's behavior.
Yeah, wow. Okay, and is there a website or somewhere to find you? So we saw
Yeah.
your book. Where's your, what
Yes.
about website or what's the best way?
BaileyPayne.com.
Okay, great. Well, this was amazing. Like so much tips and information and what to avoid and what to do right packed in here. I know there were some comments about the broken family court system, but I was like, we don't have time to get into that now. Unfortunately, it is what it is, but what can we do within that system, but especially outside of that system in our own homes and in our own lives? Because I feel like we have much more agency outside of the system. And so developing those skills is so important. So I really appreciate you jumping on and getting so much in this little bit of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
No, my pleasure. Let's definitely stay in touch and not make this the last conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay.